Okay, I know we've got a couple. Well, here we go. Okay. Well, welcome back. This is kind of this is our session before we take a break before we see each other again in the new year. And um, I want to mention a couple of things. The first, as as folks are filing in, is I know that uh, this has been a really heavy day, and I just want to acknowledge the heavy-heartedness and the shock or grief or mixture of feelings that I know I've been experiencing all day. And as we gather to do some, practical learning about uh, some of the nuts and bolts of how to make our communities more sustainable. I know that we're calling on a higher power, however we understand it, and one another for support and strength and hope and the courage to stand up for what's right wherever we can. And I just wanted to offer that and also just offer acknowledgement of the tremendous condolences that we feel for everyone who's suffered a terrible loss in Australia and in our own country as well. Um, so here we are in the midst of Hanukkah, in the midst of a holiday whose very name means dedication and is about rededicating ourselves to sacred purpose and anticipating the return of the light, even though we're very much in the darkness right now. Um, so, having said all of that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask if two people could use the hand raise function, if you'd be willing to tell us a little bit about um, your congregation and why you wanted to take this class. And I see Susan's got her hand up. So, Susan,
Thanks, Rabbi Maurice. It's nice to see everybody. Happy Hanukkah, Chag Sameach, and thank you for acknowledging what a challenging time this is. But we have to continue our work so that we can be there for our congregations. And we had 135 people attend our Hanukkah party last night. 116 had
wow,
signed up. The rest just showed up. So people clearly wanted to be in community. Um,
wow,
and it was an amazing event. And two of my fellow congregants, no, two are on this call right now. And Stephanie Denya, who's on, she was a major factor in why it was such a great event. And she's also taking a big role on in fundraising. And Tim, who's also on the call, is our VP of Finance. So I'm really delighted that they're both taking the time to do this with me. Um, we are, we've just crossed 200 households as membership in our community.
that's
When
wonderful.
we started officially as a community 30 years ago. Was that what it was? 30, and we had what, 30 families, I think. So we've really steadily grown. And we're now catching up. We did a capital campaign this year. We've put a new roof on our building, new HVAC. We're in the middle of preparing to do new floor and new carpeting. So we have really addressed the physical needs of our community. The other thing we did in the last year, thanks to the help of another Reconstructionist synagogue, Or Shalom in San Francisco, we copied their membership dues structure. And we went last year from bringing in about $140,000 in dues to this year bringing in, projected, because some of that is pledges, $280,000 in dues. So we have doubled our dues collection in 1 year. All this is thanks to learning and help from Reconstructing Judaism, from other congregations. So we really appreciate the value of our collective community in learning. I see I have a question. Oh, Oseh Shalom. I sent our dues structure to John Reel and Rabbi Daria. You guys have it. So just ask them for it. And in fact, I'm having a call with John this week to talk about leadership structure, because given how big we've gotten, I'm stepping down as president in July. Sure, Scott, I will send it to you, but you need to email me your contact info because I never know how to get it from chat. I'm happy to send it. But I'm stepping down as president. My term is up. And we are in the process of figuring out, oh, thanks, Stephanie, appreciate it, of figuring out leadership. And we have 2-year terms for our president. Our current board has many of our older, in terms of tenure, board members. Our goal is to transition to having a lot more of our younger members assume leadership positions as opposed to all the elders. And that's taking some time. We need to convince people that the president doesn't have to be a retired person. And we're working on that. But in any event, the reason I want to talk to Oseh Shalom is they have co-presidents. And we're talking about whether that's a good structure or not for a synagogue. But for us, and for many of us, it's hard to find one new president, let alone 2 co-presidents. But there are advantages to having co-presidents. So we are examining all that. We're feeling very comfortable on where we've gotten financially. And Rabbi Maurice, I promise, over the next year, we will be increasing the amount of dues we give to Reconstructing Judaism because we're getting in a better financial place. So we're very excited. We think we're doing well, but there's a lot more to do. And that's why we are taking this class and why I have several of my fellow members on this class.
Wow. I'm thrilled. That's truly a lot of really encouraging news that you just shared, and thank you for the shout out to the good people who work at the home office, and the support that you and others at Ner Shalom have really offered consistently. Um, Dan, I saw you as well signaling.
All right, sure. Thanks, Maurice. I may have raised my hand too quickly, but I think what you're looking for is a brief introduction and why we're taking the course.
Yep.
So the brief introduction to Dorshei Tzedek, a bit similar to Susan's story. We started as 6 families 35 years ago now, that broke away from another Reconstructionist community. So that'll be part of our core story. I'll leave that because it says a lot about who we are and who we became. We're now about 265 households, so we've seen wonderful growth and continued growth, which is not necessarily the case for many synagogues. Um, and it's a community, like many others in the movement, I think, that puts a lot of emphasis on Jewish values, on inclusivity, on diversity. Um, and we're taking the course to improve our fundraising methodologies. Um, we're not in a crisis. We've actually been quite successful with a three-part model. We've had progressive sliding scale dues. People self-assess based on their income. We then have a Nadiv Lev campaign that we do every spring. And now, actually, one reason we're doing this course is we notice more and more gray hair in our community. When we started 35 years ago, I remember commenting to my wife, the one thing I miss in this new congregation is where are the old people I knew when I was a kid when I went to services? Well, here we are now. Um, and so that gets to our starting to think about legacy giving and planned giving. So that's another reason we're interested in the course. So we're doing well financially, but we know there will be financial challenges ahead, and we need to stick with it and get better at it.
Wow. I mean, I think maybe we should just, scoop both of your congregations up and have you run fundraising for the movement.
Happy to share at
Um,
some point how we have done it, but we've got
um, I'm so glad we've gotten a chance to do this. And I realize we heard from three congregations last time and two today, and it's encouraging. Um, okay, well, as we had talked about, we are going to jump back into this last part of the storytelling module, and then we'll crack open the next module, which is multi-purpose fundraising, and we'll get as far as we get. I'm not too worried about exactly what our endpoint is. One question I want to throw out there just for you to keep in mind, and feel free to respond in the chat if you want. I know that there had been some interest last time in the subject of um, thanking and recognizing and acknowledging donations and some of the issues that are connected to that. And if that's a topic that enough people think would be worth including in this course, I'm gonna try to reshuffle some of the materials. So I'm just interested in hearing from you about that. Okay, I am gonna share my screen once again with all of you. That should be happening. Here we go. Bear with me a moment. Thanks for bearing with me. So this is a new laptop and it's got a couple of weird things going on with it, but all is well. Okay. Yay. So we're going to take a look at what's called the core story. And your core story, I'm going to read what's right there on the screen. It's a brief master narrative that tells people something memorable about who you are, what you do together, what you value, and why they should give money to support you. Your core story is not the same as a detailed account of your origins and overall history leading to present times. The kind of content that you might find, say, on an About Us page on your website or a Our History page. Rather, your core story is a fundraising tool. You're looking to craft a story that you can shape into three different lengths. Um, 2 minutes, which is about 280 words. 1 minute, 140 words, and 30 seconds, which can be as many as 80 words. Um, you may decide to use a version of your course story for a High Holy Days annual campaign or for fundraising campaigns that are aimed at non-members as well as members. You can use it for all kinds of things. If you had you would certainly use it for a capital campaign. If you started creating what's an annual report, which there's a whole chapter on that in the guide and why that's a good idea. This is a story that would probably feature in that report as well. Um, to get a good feel for what should go into a core story, I want to offer an example of a 2 minute core story based on a fictitious small congregation, 55 households in a small American city. And that congregation is called Beit Elohim. And before I share Beit Elohim's core story, please pay attention to a few features. Um, you'll notice that it's written almost entirely in the present tense. It uses active verbs. It keeps repeating we as a subject, and it includes one vivid image that tries to express some of the heart or soul of the congregation. Oops. Go back. Go back. Okay. So now I'm going to ask if there's a brave soul who would be willing to unmute themselves and read this core story that's on screen.
I'll
I can
read.
re-
Oh, go ahead.
At Beit Elohim, we gather every week to celebrate, to learn, and to care for one another. When a child celebrates their Bar B'nai Mitzvah, the whole congregation shows up. When a family faces illness, meals appear at the door. When we see injustice, we raise our voices together. This is what it means to belong here. We are a member-led Reconstructionist synagogue, rooted in Jewish tradition and open to the world we live in now. Interfaith families, LGBTQIA, Jews, Jews of color, and people of every background find a warm home here. Each of us teaches and learns, each of us leads and participates. Together, we create a community where no one stands alone. Our story began in 1961 when 6 families in Bakersfield came together to build a Jewish home. More than 60 years later, their spirit of collaboration lives in us. Just as they sacrificed to establish a congregation for the next generation, we take up that responsibility today. This is more than a synagogue. It is a web of community that holds you in moments of joy and lifts you in times of struggle. It is a hub where Jewish life thrives and where repair of the world is practiced every day. Your support ensures that our doors stay open, that children learn, that our voices for justice grow louder, and that every person who seeks connection finds it here. Make a tax-deductible gift at this link by October 31st to help us reach our High Holidays campaign goal of $30,000. Join us because the story of Beit Elohim is still being written, and with your help, the next chapter can be even stronger.
John, thank you so much. Um, okay, so I would personally, I would say this is an okay core story. It's not the greatest, but it can get the job done. And it's got a lot of really useful elements woven into it. Um, my biggest critique of it is I think that it would be better if it had somewhere in this mix at least one kind of vivid snapshot, a moment that people could visualize, that epitomizes not everything that's great about this congregation, but something core to it. But that's okay. We've got something to work with. I want to mention a few things about what John just read. So that was 279 words long. Um, and uh, I'll mention some of the features that I think are good about this core story. Um, it starts right in the middle of congregational life. It doesn't start way back in the past. And it describes, using active verbs, things that are going on, celebrating, learning, caring. It's using present tense and we language throughout. Um, the opening paragraph vividly depicts some specific examples of what the congregation does together, right? And um, by the end of the third paragraph, it tells people who the congregation is and some of what it values. And it's telling people some of what the congregation values, even just by choosing what to say about itself and making language choices, right? I mean, right off the bat in the first paragraph, if it says bar bat b'nai mitzvah, that is already communicating to a lot of different listeners or readers that this is a congregation that has progressive values around inclusivity, gender identity, etc. People who care about those things will notice that. Um, and, same with some of the other features that move into the second and third paragraph. There's a little bit of history, but only enough to serve the purpose of this being a fundraising tool. Just as the founding families sacrificed for the next generation, we're called on to do the same now. Maybe not the most riveting, compelling sentence you've ever heard. It's a bit of a cliche, but let's give the benefit of the doubt that this is really true about Beit Elohim. And it's better. It's not terrible. It's not bad. It can work. Um, the story comes into, it doesn't end, but it starts to pivot into the ask with one image that I do think is a strength. It's the part where it says that this is more than a synagogue. It's the image of a web of community that holds you. Um, and I think that's maybe one of the brightest spots. And then it gives a very clear way to take action, right? It has a hyperlink. So this is meant to be an online version. This might be an email. This might be on a landing page that people have clicked to from a social media post. Um, and let me say a couple other things. What this does succeed at is it gives you a concise, heartfelt invitation that captures some of who this synagogue is. This story can be modified from year to year, in part because it's not trying to tell people everything about the congregation. It is a core story, not the only core story. Um, all right. So there are times when you'll want to use a core story in different fundraising campaigns, as opposed to some of the other stories that we examined last week, right? Last week, we really focused heavily on examining what are called impact stories, stories that feature a person or a group's positive transformation thanks to the congregation's role in their lives. Your core story is different. It does tell people about some of your impacts, but in more general terms. Any questions or comments about this? Because this is a different kind of story. Feel free to, well, actually, Sherry, if you're there and you're able to help jockey hand raising or calling on people, I would be in your debt.
I think
Sure.
Sherry's there.
Yep.
Yeah, looks like Scott, looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, I liked a lot about this. I think I feel more positive about it than you do, Rabbi. I think it's good. I mean, like I like the community where no one stands alone, and this idea that every person who seeks connection finds it here. This focus on the individual and what their potential connection would be with this, I think, is good. And I am taking a little bit of notes in terms of Beit Havarim. It's something that I think sometimes we forget that our story is designed to land with an individual who may be a member or donor or whatever. So I like that. The question, I guess, Mike, if I had a little criticism of it, it's I don't get much of a sense of Bakersville, and I, and I do think, and I've
Yes.
had to sort of push this a little bit with this work with my own synagogue because I'm not a fundraising person. I'm a membership development person, or that's the committee I'm on, and and I keep having to say, we're in Atlanta. I mean, that makes us, specific to Atlanta. And I think that reflecting the fact that we're part of this community, because the people coming, that we're trying to talk to are members of this community or new members to this community. And I really like keep trying to emphasize that. But I liked a lot about this. It's very relevant to what Beit Havarim is all about too. I wish they were just a little more specific about the stuff and about their location.
Thank you. And I've sort of trended warmer or colder on this story. I based it kind of as an amalgam of two or three different ones that I saw. So I'm glad that there were a few things that you really liked about it, and I like your idea very much of also giving people a more imminent sense of the community that this place is rooted in. And there are a lot of ways that can be done, either with humor or with a single detail that is, very specific to the particular town or city you live in. Who's next?
Good. Jody, you want to unmute?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand if there's like Rabbi Maurice, like if you have a answer you're trying to get us at, because I was also like, oh my God, this is great. I almost like chatted my counterpart Cheryl and be like, we got to lift this and just like edit it for ourselves. And I just want to, so I want to put it in, I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'm going to ask you, like, are we trying to go somewhere that this example was not good, like good enough, or are you just being self-deprecating? But because I think just in that first line, having just recently gone to a neighbor's child's, they ended up landing on calling their thing a b'nai mitzvah because they use they them pronouns, and that was the first time I heard that, and that was interesting. But the idea of a whole community showing up for a b mitzvah is actually, like, to me very vivid, because, like, again, this was in the Reform community, which I'll be honest, I'm so ignorant because I grew up so conservative. I didn't know Reform people only had service, like congregations only had services on Friday night. So going on a Saturday, I thought was just like when this happened. But pretty much everyone there was there for the kid, not for the community. So I think that idea that to me, that is like so much more authentically true to tradition of like the community is welcoming this child as being a fully functioning member of the kahila, yeah. So I thought it was really good. So are you trying to like bait and switch us? Are we going somewhere else?
No,
Okay.
no. you know, what I was trying to do was, I was being a little bit self-deprecating, and I've looked at this like 400 times. So it may be that it's lost some of its pop, for me, but no, I really meant this to be a useful example. And I want to also say, like, no one should worry about um, copy, paste, modify, um, customize for any of the examples that you might find in the guide, or in, a slide stack from, uh, from these classes. Um, there's a limited universe of things you can say, and ways you can say them, and that's okay. And honestly, um, I think it's a really useful exercise to grab something like this or a couple other examples, that you might come across from other congregations. If you happen to, get a couple examples from fellow congregations, and to not be afraid to go ahead and start by copy paste, and then, you know, substituting in, all of the specifics that are different. And by the time you've done that, even if you didn't make any other changes, you would already have something that was truly different. And then you would end up making other changes, just because you'd want to have it reflect your own tone, your own voice. You might change the order of a couple different components. You might cut one paragraph and add something new. And there's no need to, invent the wheel from scratch. And this does cover, a lot of bases. And one of the things that is great about this is that it's 279 words long. This could work in a lot of different contexts. And one cool thing about a core story is that it not only works for you in certain fundraising contexts, it also can be tweaked and serve, as like a brochure about your congregation, or material that's available on your website for people who don't know you guys yet, but who are visitors and are checking you out. Who's next?
Dan, you have your hand up. You want to unmute?
Um, yeah, I like this, but I think here's an idea that could, in my mind, make it a little bit stronger. If you had to summarize the pitch in one sentence, it's please give to make the next chapter even stronger, right? I like that closing.
Mhm.
But it doesn't then describe what the congregation aspires to do next.
Right.
And I think people like to know. Yeah, it says, ensure that our doors stay open. So it basically says we need money to continue to do what we are already doing. But
Yep.
since you allude to the next chapter, which is a phrase I like, say something about what more? What's the new thing? What is the new chapter that I want to be visualizing when I give?
I agree with your critique completely. And I think that, I wonder if I have like a function where I can, nope, I was hoping I could draw around part of this. But the sentence in the second to last, oh, go back. There we go. In the second to last paragraph, the sentence, that you just mentioned, Dan, your support ensures that. I could easily see this being better by rewriting that sentence so that instead it read, your support will help us do the following, colon, and then, state three things that the synagogue wants to do in the coming year. Things that are more vivid than keep our doors open. Um, the more specific that you could be, the better. So it's definitely a general rule that I've encountered over and over again in researching this, that uh, people do want to know what they're going to help bring into reality by donating. And if you can, you don't have to tell them every detail about that, but if you can tell them even two tidbits that are kind of exciting, that goes a long way. Okay, who's next?
Kelly, you want to unmute?
Yes, thank you. So I kind of was on Rabbi Mori's side in that it feels a little general, maybe a little, I don't want to say blah. I think the second half is amazing. I like the second half. It really kind of takes you on the good verbiage for when we ask for money. I find that's the hard part when we write up or try to do an in-kind donation. I think this is really well said. It pulls you in. My struggle, and I think a lot of us struggle with the beginning part, almost like trying to write a mission statement. We all kind of say the same thing. What don't most synagogues do X, Y, and Z? Don't we all use the keywords of interfaith, Jews of color, LGBTQ? Like, and we are, but so do three others in my same state. Like, I look at mission statements, we all have that very similar because that's really who we are. And I think as Reconstructionist Jews in general, so it kind of falls there. When you say that the whole congregation shows up, that turned me off because I can't believe you get 100% every time. Like, we show up and support, but I was like, really 100% every time? I'd love to see a synagogue like that. Maybe they exist. So I find that the hard part. How do you really make yourself stand out?
Yeah.
What really makes us so unique that we be so different than everyone else, but still within the community that you would feel a part of from your old background, what you're looking for. So that's where I struggle with core story, or like I said, that mission statement. I like the end, but I think that's what I would try to, but I don't know how I would make it better. That's the challenge.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's interesting that jumped out at you about the whole congregation showing up. I think that could only be plausible for a really small congregation. Um, and I think one of the places to start in terms of wanting the first section that's being descriptive about what you do together and what you value, um, is is to just lean heavily on telling the truth. Um, and so if it actually wasn't true that the whole congregation shows up, then it would be important to change that. It would be important, to say what is true, true and wonderful, right? So, when a child celebrates their bar mitzvah, members show up beaming with enthusiasm. Um, might already be more true for most congregations. And as far as what you were saying about how one of the things that might be difficult is to have your progressive Reconstructionist synagogue stand out, because conservative and reform synagogues nowadays are also front loading their welcoming attributes, their inclusive attributes. Everybody's gotten the memo. And it's not, I don't mean to say it cynically like that. I actually think there's also like sincere kavanah, sincere intention behind that trend. Um, so as I'm looking at that paragraph, the third one from the beginning, I'm realizing that what's more specific and unique is the part about each of us teaches and learns, each of us leads and participates. That's also a pretty high bar. Like, if you're going to say that, it should really be true. Like, you shouldn't be saying that if in reality six of us lead and participate, and but we aspire to be a congregation where many more lay people lead and participate. Um, so telling the truth is important, and focusing on the elements of the truth that are really exciting. Yeah, I'm, by the way, like, this is one of the reasons why it's great if you can have, one person kind of create a starter version of this and then let it go through two other people or three other people, um, and give them instructions, right? Like a short list of bullet points of what this is meant to accomplish and what are key attributes that are considered great practice. And it'll get better and better as it gets refined. Do we have more people with their hands up on this?
I don't see anybody with their hand up now, but Jane, you had your hand up a minute ago. Did you change your mind?
Yeah, I found that I was probably going to be repeating what other folks said. The only thing I'd say is I feel like if there'd be a way to move the Our Story Began up a little bit, that might help. And then for me, the second half actually felt more boilerplate, and a little jargony.
Uh,
Web of Community sounds like I don't know, I'm being hypercritical because it's too late and,
it's okay.
it's just the way it is. Web of Community sounds like a great line for a grant application. I'm not sure it grabs real humans. Um, but I think it's hard to say something that concisely. That's why I put my hand down because it's like, okay, but how do you say that as succinctly as that in another way?
Right. No, these are great points, and it's so important that that the story works, especially for the people who craft it. And I'll just say, boy, is it difficult to try to say a lot in a small number of words. And this is the long form version, right? I mean, part of the challenge is to cut this in half, and then to cut that by 60%, because you want to have a version of this that could be used in a social media, not in a social media post, but in a 30-second, that could be spoken orally in 30 seconds. So, uh, and as you do that cutting, um, you're not gonna be able to retain each idea, but just in a more concise version. Some things are gonna have to go, and that's okay. The this is not meant to be the most memorable fundraising story that your community has. It's the impact stories are far more likely to be more memorable. Um, this is serving a purpose, okay? And part of what it's communicating is a sense of that to people who are just still getting to know your congregation, part of what it's communicating to them is what you're all about. For people who already know your congregation well, what this needs to do is ring true. It needs to not feel like it's exaggerating or um, kind of sliding into a jargony, um, vague description of who you really are. It needs to ring true for those people, and then it needs to get some enthusiasm flowing for people about what they can accomplish by making a gift. Not what they personally can, but what the community can. And more than anything else, it needs to create the possibility for the person hearing it or reading it to feel like this is a group they are happy to belong to, and that they feel a sense of belonging and being a part of writing this story together. So those are the purposes this is supposed to accomplish. And it, um, it'll do that, even if it's not the most memorable story. If it's paired in a newsletter or on a landing page on your website, or in an email with a couple of wonderfully chosen photos, then it's going to really pop some more for people.
Good. Chaim's got his hand up, and then next Scott.
Great. And then we'll wrap it up after Scott and move on.
So this did not reach me emotionally. Advertising reaches people emotionally. It was too cerebral for me.
Aha. Okay.
And and also having been in fundraising at different times, the most important thing about fundraising for me is asking. So after we learn all these rules, it's important to just ask. And a lot of people just give because they're asked. It's as simple as that.
How did you feel about the ask in this particular version? Did it seem like it came in the right place, or if you were going to do it, would you change it somehow?
So I ask at the end, and when we just finished $1 million campaign for an endowment, and we're not quite done. We'll be done here in a few months because there are several big givers who said, "Talk to me next year. I only give in January."
Okay.
So here in Madison, we're a community of 200 families. We've been around for 35 years, similar to other communities. And the biggest difference we have is that we don't own our building. We share with the Unitarians, and it's a Frank Lloyd Wright building. So we don't have the expense of maintenance. We just have rent, saving lots of money as part of that. But we have our Save Our Future Fund, which after 7 years, we have raised $1 million, and the interest for the $1 million should help fund our expansion. And then the other thing that I learned from talking to you several years ago was that at 200 families to 250 families, you have growing pains because you have the need for infrastructure and staff,
Yep.
and you don't have the resources for that. We have savings that we're using up this year as a part of that, and we'll continue to grow and grow past that as we're in the growing doldrums. Is that what they're called? I don't know what they're called, but you get the idea. Is when you're at 200 families, you like need a new person to do something or another, and specific to the community. And so we are there. We increased our staff, and then for the first time in 35 years, we're in the red, but we have savings to be able to pay for that.
I mean, it sounds like you all are doing a lot of things really beautifully. And I can also speak to, well, I attended a bat mitzvah about 8 years ago at your synagogue, and I love the space. Um, and thank you. I guess is thank you for the feedback and the reflections. Scott, I think, was also.
Yeah, this is quick because I spoke already earlier, but I just want to say, and it might respond to what Jane pointed out and what Chaim pointed out, because I kind of there were aspects of what they said that I really agreed with, and I'm a big one for understanding origin stories if they're relevant to where you are today. And so that idea about our story began in 1967 when six families in Bakersville came together to build a Jewish home. To me, like you could dial that up so easily. Six young Jewish families came together to form the first ever, like whatever, like to make that origin story a bit of like gave us a sense of mission. It wasn't just we decided to form a synagogue, so like I feel like that's if you were going to dial this up a little bit or plus it up a little bit, you could start there maybe and give me a sense of like, wow, this place since 1961, it's been young and dynamic and coming together. And I'm not sure what Bakersville is like, but maybe that's a part of it too. And I just say this again from very biased point of view because Beta Havarim started as the gay and lesbian synagogue in Atlanta during the AIDS epidemic when no synagogues would take those members. So, I mean, we can't walk away from our origin story. It's too important to the whole story, to the whole core story. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
I think that's really excellent. And, um, that this needs to capture what is really meaningful and profound about your unique congregation in some way. And so, Scott, just as you were saying, like if your synagogue is one where the origin story not only matters a lot, but really is still a very living component of uh, of that motivates and informs a lot of decisions that you make on a day-to-day basis, um, then I agree. Then I think it does make sense to feature it more vividly, maybe even earlier. Um, and the the trick might be that you might find you need, 5 sentences to get out what you at first want to say about that, and then the trick might be then shrinking that down to 2 sentences. And you can dwell on an origin story for longer than this example does, and with more specificity than this one does, um, and still have it be in the present tense and forward looking, right? That you're talking about how those origins that you're so proud of and are still inspired by, matter in the here and now and drive what pulls us together and what makes us excited about what we want to bring into the community. So yeah, I mean, really my biggest hope with this exercise that we've been doing together is that you could literally take a variety of boilerplate versions of these, and you can find them that don't even relate to synagogues. You can find examples of these that are written for churches, um, and as an exercise, you can literally take the skeletal structure that's there and then keep making changes, keep embroidering more vivid details, reorganize the order in which the information is being presented, um, you know, give some careful attention to how the ask lands, which Chaim was talking about, um, and and then have a second person and then maybe a third person um, give it their own edit or embellishment, and you end up with something that you polish and then feel really good about, that you can then use for a couple of years, before you feel like it maybe needs to be refreshed. Okay. The last thing
So there's a question in the chat that I think is important, and the question is, who's the primary audience for this? Is it current
uh,
members, prospectives, or outside future supporters?
Thank you. Actually, you just literally almost took the words out of my mouth with that. What I was about to say is, um, the core story is important because it's a workhorse. It's actually meant to be usable for all of those audiences that you just mentioned. So the idea is you would, you know, you would work on this core story. You would then have like your sort of not boilerplate, your sort of agreed upon current version, at all three of those word lengths. And you would, maybe keep it safely in your story bank. Um, but the idea would be for a variety of different people, whether it's your administrator or someone who works on the newsletter, or people who are working on a given fundraising campaign, or people who are working on new materials for your website, and for your printed material for visitors and potential future members. You can take the different versions of this story and then tweak them to make so that this works, for all those different audiences. And obviously, the part that will change the most is the ask. And if you're using it for a non-fundraising purpose, then there isn't a fundraising ask. There might be a different ask. There might be an ask for people to, fill out their name and email to get to have somebody contact them. Or it's always good to have an ask for people to take some kind of action, even if it's not a fundraising thing, because you want to engage people. But so that's the answer to that question, is this is supposed to do a lot of work for you, and therefore it's worth it to put in a decent amount of time crafting it. Okay. I'm going to do something in the follow-up email I send out. And I saw earlier chat messages regarding maybe somebody not getting the emails. I'll make sure that you do get them. We're not going to try this right now, but what I am going to actually include in the follow-up email is a recommended homework assignment, which is to try to craft an 80-word version for another fictional synagogue. And I have the details about that synagogue on screen. And I'm not going to read them all, but this is Temple Ahava, the Temple of Love. And you can see some of the details about it. And you'd have to use your imagination for
Sorry, we can't see the slide.
You can't see the slide.
I do.
Weird.
Oh,
Let
huh.
me stop
I see it.
and restart.
Here.
Make
Never
sure that
mind.
your
It's
make
me.
sure that your view is on side by side, and then you'll see it. In the upper right-hand corner, you should have a choice to pick view, and you can pick, well, you can't pick side by side now.
Yeah, you've done it now, yeah.
That's okay. I'm putting it back.
I'm glad to know it's just me. It's fine.
Should be coming back. Yay. There it is. Are folks seeing it now?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. I want to pivot. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I had more things that were supposed to come up on the screen. Right. Sorry. If you look to either side of Temple Ahava on the screen, and I'll include this explicitly in the instructions, but I'll be reminding you to use we language, to use active verbs, and keep sticking to the present tense, to use vivid images, and to make sure you've got a well-placed and unambiguous ask that is specific and that gives people a way to take the next step. All right. I am actually going to toggle through to the end here, and right. So this slide has just got another good thing that we haven't talked about so much tonight, which is all of the stories that you develop, whether it's an impact story or a core story, it's a great practice for this we aspect to always be present, that you're wanting the undertone of all of your fundraising stories, the implication that's always there, is for the reader to have a sense that this is our story together, and the reader or the listener belongs in it, and that they're being invited to participate in the continuation of the story. So, and then I've got these other little great practices that we've talked about throughout. I won't repeat them because they're there on your screen. Okay, so let's pause for about 2 or 3 minutes. I need to do that. I need to get another glass of water. And then we'll crack open multi-purpose fundraising, which is a lot of fun. Um, so see you in like 2 to 3 minutes.
Maurice, am I muted? You're muted.
I
You
was
need to have,
muted.
yeah, you need to have more glasses in preparation for this. Oh, by the way, I have 4 water bottles, so I'm prepared.
Got it. Fair enough. I think that's actually a good idea. Um, okay, welcome back. We're going to pivot. And let's get started talking about a particular kind of fundraising that, and this may seem like a fairly abrupt or jarring pivot, um, because this is a type of fundraising activity that is a little bit quirky. It's not likely to be the centerpiece of anybody's fundraising strategy. Um, but it's a lot of fun. And It has some really valuable insights to offer about great practice for fundraising in general. So that is my segue into talking about multi-purpose fundraising. And I'm just doing the screen share thing again. So thanks for your patience with that. There we go. Sorry, this is taking me an extra moment. There we go. Wow, that is slow. I'm going to have the IT person at work look into this new laptop because it's brand new. Okay, so um, let's dive in. So, multi-purpose fundraising is pretty straightforward. It's any activity or project that generates some income while simultaneously achieving one or more other congregational objectives. Okay, so it's two things in one. It's a fundraiser, but it's also accomplishing some other goal that your congregation has. That's the basic idea. Um, when we're talking about what kind of other goals, literally almost any other goal that you might have, right? So I've posted a few here on the screen. And the ones I've posted here, I've chosen with a purpose because some of the goals that your congregation has may not be explicitly written down anywhere. So, for example, um, offering adult learning probably is written down in your mission statement or your bylaws as an explicit goal. Being of service to your members in ways that are just general, not specific to Jewish life, like being of service to helping your members improve their overall quality of life, is probably a goal that you would feel good about and that is kind of implied in your congregation's existence, but it might not be written down anywhere. Okay. The idea is you pick a goal that you think you could pair with a fundraising activity, and you fuse those together, and you deliberately choose things that are joyful and mission aligned. So it's important to try to make this fun for the people who are going to be responsible for putting on the event. And by the way, we are talking primarily about one-time events, although you could do a class or a multi-session workshop as a multi-purpose fundraiser. So, da-da-da. Um, if you were putting this together, ooh, my slides got ahead of me. Go back one more. There we go. Um, a few different planning questions. They're on the screen. You've come up with an idea. It is a multi-purpose fundraising event. You're going to want to, think and identify explicitly what parts of your mission or your goals are being met by this. If there are you want to identify who is going to come into contact with the congregation, especially if it's people who are prospective new members. You want to think about that. Or if it's subgroups within your congregation who are fairly inactive. It would be good to know that this event may bring those folks into greater contact. You want to assess how much volunteer and staff time and energy this might require. Of course, if it had any financial expenses, you would want to note that as well. And you want to think about how you're going to measure success, because you're not just going to be measuring it in terms of how much money you raised. So those are all general tips of advice for this. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually include some specific examples. These are not specific recommendations. I'm not saying go do these. I'm saying these are some examples of what this could look like. And it would only make sense for you to try something like this if it was right for your congregation, if it leaned into some of your competencies, going back to our very first session, right? Some of the things your congregation is really, really good at. Okay, so here's an example. Generically, this is teen-led arts night, but more specifically, I have an example that looks like this. Imagine that you have a congregation that's got 4 very active, very dedicated post-B'nai Mitzvah teenagers, and there is a a teacher in the religious school who's kind of like a youth mentor, and that person and your 4 teens have come together and they want to do a fundraising event. They are talking about it just as the school year is beginning, and they want to do it in the spring, maybe in May of the following year. And it's going to be a multicultural evening of poetry and music featuring young artists in the general community, not just the Jewish community. And the mentor has connections at the local large university, which has a graduate school of nonprofit management. And the mentor has come up with this idea that to reach out to the School of Nonprofit Management. And the mentor has found a couple of graduate students who are willing, as a graded project, to work with these 4 teens to help plan out this springtime event. And together they, in conversation with the board of your synagogue, come up with this goal of trying to net $10,000. They put together a small budget, and they draw on some of the competencies and resources that the synagogue already has. And you can see those on the slide, right? You've got this, in this scenario, you've got your own building. It has a usable stage. It has a large social hall. You have sound equipment. You have a member who is willing to volunteer their time, who is a sound professional. You have a videographer who does really nice work, who is going to drastically cut their price to give you good video from this evening. And you also have a member that the teen mentor called upon, who is a college advisor for families and high school students, and who liked the idea that this project could be a major part of the profile that these 4 teenagers are trying to build for their college applications. So why have I gone to all these great lengths to paint this rather elaborate scenario for you? Because I want to suggest that a great multi-purpose fundraising event can grow out of your local competencies, right? Those strengths and even superpowers that are present in your existing congregation. The combination of those things is going to be so different from one congregation to another, but it's not that hard to dream up a plausible scenario like the one that I've just put forward. And so now you've got this cohort of people who've come together and they are planning with some help from the board, maybe from somebody in your fundraising committee, from these members who are volunteering their time, from the two graduate students in the School of Nonprofit Management, and of course the teenagers themselves who have got the better part of the entire school year to work to help plan this event. And that includes, by the way, planning um, the uh, the publicity, making sure that there is a website landing page, that there are easy ways for people to pledge in advance, including maybe local businesses, right? I mean, the $10,000 might sound steep at first to net that, but not necessarily if four able-bodied teens with this much support are going to be approaching the wider community, are going to be building a campaign that ends up having slots for members of the congregation to donate in different suggested amounts. They might surpass this before the event even takes place, and then still collect some money from tickets and any snacks that are being offered during this event. So this is a big effort, right? This is kind of like almost to the level of a gala event. It's not as huge an event as like an auction, or like a full-blown band concert with a lot of different complicated sound issues that need to be managed, right? This is like one person at a time, or maybe a couple of probably mostly solo musical artists as well as poets, but it's going to plug into their high school and potentially draw some young people from outside the Jewish community in. Anybody want to comment on this? This is the most elaborate example I'm going to offer. The others are much simpler. Oh, Dan.
Yeah, Maurice, I had a question,
Yeah.
which is a simple one, and then I'll explain why. Why do this? And
Great.
the reason I ask is not about that it's complicated to do, but at least in our congregation, but it might not be unique to us, there's sensitivity around fundraising activities. And is it an event that come enjoy what four teenagers can do with their music? Oh, and you're going to hit me up for money. Or I'd like to go to that, but it's going to make me uncomfortable because I'm not here to participate in a fundraiser. I think that's kind of a concern. Maybe it's solved by making it clear that it is a fundraising event with music from four teenagers, but to make it sort of multi-purpose, at least in our congregational culture, I think might be a bit problematic.
Okay, your question's super helpful because it's making me aware of something I didn't explain well enough. And then it's also it's going to help me better define what I mean by multi-purpose, um, uh, and the fundraising role in it. So let me first address the thing I didn't explain well enough. This idea is not that the four teenagers are the musicians. They are going to organize an event in which maybe a dozen multicultural poets and musicians who are teenagers in the local community are going to be the performers. They are the MCs and organizers of the event. So that's just one thing. And the second thing is for every single one of these events, you are totally explicitly saying from the get-go, this is a fundraiser. Okay. You're not, that is explicit. It's multi-purpose because it is addressing some additional goals, right? So one of the goals of this congregation, since they have a post-B'nai Mitzvah educational program, is that they want their post-B'nai Mitzvah teens to have meaningful, confidence-building, memorable developmental Jewish experiences. So this is addressing that goal. It's also addressing a couple other goals. If it's got 4 teenage members organizing a fundraising event that people of all ages in the congregation are going to hear about throughout the course of that school year, and potentially they're going to get members are going to start rooting for these 4 teams. There might be a couple of newsletter articles. There might be a social media short video in which the teens speak directly to the rest of the congregation. There's a lot of older people in the congregation who might get quite impressed to see how the congregation is actually having an impact and how these teens are having an impact. So if this much energy is being spent, not just by the teens, but by these other people as well, it needs to be worth it. And by making this multi-purpose, you're making it much more worth it. And you're creating a memorable event that ends up hopefully being experienced as a success by the whole congregation.
I'm speaking partly from our history. When we decided to do a 30th anniversary, there was actually quite a bit of debate whether it should be a fundraiser or it absolutely should not be a fundraiser. It should just be a celebration. And there were, articulate arguments on both sides.
Sure. And I mean, that sounds like a really different kind of event. But, in some synagogues, a thing where you've got a small group of capable teens and they approach the board and say, we want to do a fundraiser, and it's going to help us build our profile for our college apps. And we've got this scheme we want to share with you. Like, some synagogues, the board might be like, we love your energy and this isn't quite right for our congregation, but let's see if we can come up with something similar. Right? Like probably the answer wouldn't be a flat no in almost any of our congregations, but it might not be right for every congregation.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to sidetrack us.
It's okay. No, it's good.
Thanks for your response.
I know I see Stephanie and Scott. Sherry, actually, why don't I delegate over to you as I was before?
Okay, I see Stephanie and Scott too. Stephanie.
Yeah, actually, well, I kind of wanted to respond to that, like why this event question. And because a number of things come to mind about why doing, in addition to what Rabbi Maurice was saying, that yes, it's a great way to get kids engaged, but like for us, every year we do a fundraiser specifically for what we call Nitzanim, right? Our Jewish educational program. It's multi-age, pre-K through post-Bar Mitzvah Academy kids. And, I think that, it's funny because last night after our Hanukkah party, we had 2 of our Bar Mitzvah Academy students who were super active in our Hanukkah gift shop. Like one young guy came up with like a whole spinning game. Like you spin this and you roll it, or you spin the dreidel, and like if you get this, you get this much off of your item. Like it's a great opportunity for young people to discover autonomy, learn to organize, learn that they're like that they get the support of the shul. And so yeah, maybe it's a little bit more work on some level on the part of the adults, but I think that as a like if it was me and this was presented to me, I would want it to be specifically a fundraiser for the kids programming itself, right? Like,
Yep.
so often it's like, how do we make this make sense? Well, we make this make sense because then the families of those kids and the extended families and other friends are going to want to come see their friends perform and support their kids and their friends in this kind of activity. And so, you know, I think that it's, you know, again, it's about the narrative. Like, what is the story that we
Yes.
build around any of these events, and how do we make them make sense for whatever it is that we're doing? And so the mom who took over sort of like managing the gift shop this year is one of these young boys or young guys' moms. And she's like wanting to enlist them in fundraising for Ner Shalom and Nitzanim this year. And I think it's a great idea. They're high energy kids and they're really smart. And so I was actually like, oh my gosh, it's so funny that Rabbi Maurice presented this. I was like, oh, well, there it is. A universe is conspiring to say, yes, do this. So yeah, I just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, that's fun, and it goes to the point, right? That like this is a very idiosyncratic example, and it might land close to the mark for some congregations, and it might just be way out in left field for others. But you said one thing, Stephanie, I want to accent in our waning moments, and then I know Scott is waiting, and that is. Pictures, photographs, stories. That's another one of the reasons for doing a fun multi-purpose fundraising event. This is a very elaborate one. I've got other ones that are so simple where there are a few hours of work and that's it. But
Scott had his hand up for a question or comment.
yes,
yes. This is sort of quick, but I just on this example, it was a little bit, it was very specific and kind of thing. I think you would do an event like this if your fundraiser said, we can tap some other types of funds because this is about outreach and about community building and stuff, not just like you would take on, I feel you would take on something like this if your fundraiser, if your fundraising committee was like, I think we have something for this that really aligns with this really well. Because it seems like a lovely thing, but I share some of what Dan had said in terms of what, it seemed a little bit maybe off a little bit, but it's a great idea. So what I was going to say about so Beit Havrim has a ton of musicians. We have a lot of people. So we have lots of opportunities to do stuff like this. And we do it and we do it and we always have like a full house and everything. But our debate as fundraisers is how much should we charge? And there is a lot of like emotional discussions about that because we're like, well, let's not make it too expensive. It's like, well, it's a fundraiser. Like it's got to be expensive enough. So like we did a thing over the summer called Sips and Strings, our string quartet, which is multi-generational. And, and it was beautiful. And we paired it with a wine event and everything. And no one wanted to charge more than like $18 a ticket. And I'm like, yeah, we could sell it out in 2 seconds, but it wasn't really reaching what it could be for all the work that went into it anyway. So that's the other side of this, I guess.
I'm glad you brought up that example as well. And if it wasn't 931, we would actually unpack that. And I wanted to say more about Stephanie's comment, but that's okay because what's going to happen is I am going to think about. I think that there may be a way that I can share the other examples that are in this presentation with you so that they're available to everybody between tonight and when we meet again in early January. Because this is like, now you've got the basic concept, and if it's 9:32, if you can indulge me to 9:34, we'll definitely close then. Now that you've got the basic concept, I'll just give you a super quick example of one of the other ideas. So you could have a taste and learn event that focuses on a particular type of food that is paired with a rabbi or a knowledgeable layperson teaching about classical Jewish texts that also address that type of food. Okay, so the easiest example to do this for is wine, because there are reams of Talmudic text about wine. Um, and and then you could turn, and then again, this is a fundraiser advertised as such. So what's happening? What are your other goals? Well, part of it is adult ed, because you've got the learning going on. Part of it is community building, right? If it turns out you have you have a nearby uh, winery, then maybe you're partnering with them and giving them a little bit of free opportunity to present their wares and advertise themselves. And and that also meets a secondary goal, which is to just continue to spread awareness of your congregation through many, many different channels out into your local community, because that will actually in turn drive greater interest, and eventually it will drive some membership growth. So you create an event that is not months of preparation, but is a one-off event. And maybe there's a ticket price to kind of speak to Scott's congregation's dilemma. Maybe there's a ticket price that is $18, but since it's a fundraiser and you've got 3 months before the fundraiser of promoting it as a fundraiser, maybe there are solicited gifts to sponsor this event, or other ways of people being invited to donate in support of this event. If the fundraiser was raising money for a very specific goal and not general operations, and the goal was attractive to a lot of people, then that might make it successful. But I want to stop now. I want to respect everyone's time and just say stand by for the next message that will include more info about this particular type of fundraising. And feel free to email me during this interim. And I wish everybody a peaceful end to this challenging secular new year, with hope for the light to shine more brightly in the one that's coming. And thank you, Sherry. And thanks to everybody for taking time tonight. And we'll see you.
Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you.